Yeah, that's exactly right. The momentum has really shifted. We've seen the head bob in full effect for the last couple of games. And no surprise that Hikaru was able to put that position away. It's his bread and butter. He always goes for that easy kingside attack. And so far, he's played positions that really lend themselves to blitz.
And I know we only time will tell this, but I wonder when the match is over, Aman, and we might end up looking back and thinking that it was game two of the 5+1 that decided the whole thing.
Yeah, it certainly set the tone because you're just not. Hikaru's going to make different decisions in that next game afterwards. So, the ripple effect is really impossible to say what would have happened. However, Hikaru is known for exactly what we saw there. Against a player that he feels he's the favorite against, he's so tricky, and he's not just going to give you the win. He is one of the most resourceful defenders in the game, and that means that if he's in a losing position or worse position, Tanya, he still has great winning chances. Like he doesn't quit.
He just doesn't. I don't think that word exists for him. And the number of times we've seen the turnarounds happen with Hikaru, and I think that's even something that Magnus has spoken about. Hikaru's resourcefulness as a defender is probably his biggest strength. When it comes to seconds, then you could be completely winning, but we'd still call Hikaru a favorite in those time scrambles. But the position that we have right now, I'm liking Liam's play here. More space with the white pieces. Your knight has this beautiful spot on e5 to jump to, controlling the center. So far, looking pretty good for Liam.
Yeah, this is a position I think almost both players don't mind. I know that white is supposed to be a little bit favored here, mainly because black doesn't have an active plan. Whether you take on c5 or play pawn to b5, black isn't really doing anything. There's not really too many targets. d4 can be hit, but as you said, there's always knight e5, and white is going for this plan of putting all the pawns on dark squares. There's no avenues for the black bishop. So while it's not an absolutely crushing advantage, white just has the space to do whatever you're interested in doing. h4, h5 is certainly the plan that I'm expecting.
And especially with that last move, right? Because rook h1 in the air as well, just to assist the queen once that h file does open up. Meanwhile, Hikaru eyeing the other flank for activity. He wants to try to get as many majors off the board. Rook a8 to follow.
Yeah, rook a7 is a great way to try to take over the a file. This is something that some players struggle with. You think that the two rooks are attacking each other. Okay, who's going to actually own this file? Rook a7, if you take, the queen will recapture, and then the rook slides over, and white loses control of the a file.
And now we have a knight versus bishop position where so instructive the way Liem, as you earlier mentioned, has put all his pawns restricting that bishop activity. Very often we might think it's better to put it on the light square so that they don't come under attack. But when you're playing for more, when you're playing for advantage, you actually do need to do this to make sure that the bishop doesn't become, a sniper in some of these positions. Right now, more space for white. I'm still picking Liem in this position.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder. There are a lot of principles and rules that we follow in chess, but they can be different or even opposite for the middle game versus the end game. In the end game, we might want our pawns, in this case, on light squares so they're safe. But in the mid game, if all the pawns were on light squares, that bishop would be having a field day. It would control every single square in the position. So because the queens are on the board, I do think it makes more sense. And that's why Quang Liem has things organized like this. But it seems like Hikaru's plan is kind of reaching there first, right? He's going to take over that A file, and I don't think that Quang is doing that much other than queen b2 and maybe trying to challenge over there.
Trying to challenge the A line, or hidden ideas of maybe trying to get to the C pawn in certain positions if there was a trade on b6 at some moment. You could go queen b2, but I think Hikaru was also right to slide over his own queen to that A file. Instead, we've got Liem putting pressure on b6. If you go b5, do you go all in with knight b6? That question will remain a mystery. Pawn takes pawn. Big decision now. I'd be tempted to recapture with the knight.
Yeah, the move pawn takes on c5 is going to be the standard recapture, and then you sort of have to convince yourself whether knight c5 is right. If you can sink that knight on b6, of course, f6, usually f4, and that was the computer's arrow saying pawn to f4, Tanya, the only way to hold things together, but it makes perfect sense because if you take that, all of a sudden the d pawn is weak and then pawn to e5 is happening.
It's very interesting. And meanwhile, Hikaru, he does double up on the A file, inviting that knight to jump forward. Does he want to trade queens or try to fight for activity? The problem piece is, of course, the dark squared bishop, which looks very lifeless right now. The white knight could also head for d6.
Yeah, the bishop looks lifeless for now. Pay attention, if in the future we see something like queen a2, then there's going to be an exchange. The pawns are probably going to exchange here, and the bishop will try to sort of get behind these pawns. The d pawn is the only weakness in the position, really, that you can actually attack. So I think Hikaru will be looking at that while trying to bring the king into the center of the board. So probably a queen trade here is not that bad, but if you look at white's king, so exposed here, Tanya, you kind of think that you might want to play for an attack as well.
And I think that's the dilemma that he's going through in his head. Does he keep the queens on the board? The answer is a yes. Attacking the d4 pawn right now, but it looks like our blue arrow says that needs to be ignored and go for the counter offense with knight c8. If the rook moves anywhere else except the 7th rank, you've got knight e7 check picking up the c6 pawn.
Yeah, and it's been played. That's a tough evaluation to make, that knight e7, knight c6 is something you have time for, because I would be concerned about how many squares this rook is starting to access over here, both across on the 3rd rank, but also potentially the 2nd rank as well, pinning the queen to the king.
Big threat. So will Hikaru decide to go for the full counter offense, sacrificing, or will he keep things under control? He's down on the clock, not something we are very used to seeing. He does keep knight e7 check under check. Meanwhile, d4 still attacked. And queen a3. Watch out for queen a3, rook b2.
I like that. Queen a3, rook b2. Also, the d pawn is fully hanging. The knight is on one of those weird squares. It's amazing. It's a really good piece, but black is kind of ignoring it. And the pieces are working really well without bothering with any of these squares that the knight controls. So for now, it feels like Hikaru is working around this d6 knight. But remember, moves like h5, Tanya, can just pry open the position. You have to be prepared for h5 basically as soon as possible.
And Hikaru looking into the distance, trying to figure out attacking possibilities. The queen defends the d4 pawn. Is he going to set up the idea of rook b2 via either c3 or a3?
Yeah, rook b2 is an idea. Also taking on e5. It might look crazy to do that when white just doubled the pieces on the f file, but there is rook f8 to challenge things. So I think we're just seeing the queen inch her way into the position here. You mentioned rook b2. It's on tap. The d pawn is loose. There's also the idea to take on e5 and rook f8 next. This is getting dicey, Tanya.
Oh. It's getting into tactic territory, right? And the blue arrow says rook e1 to go rook e2, a 2nd rank defense. I don't think you can step up or down with the king because you relinquish all control of that 2nd rank. Hikaru will get in the rook, will get in the queen, will give you checkmate, and he does it. I thought rook b2 followed by queen c2, queen d2 is super dangerous.
So I'm wondering if he's counting on queen e1 with the idea that queen takes d4, maybe you take on f6, but the queen could come back and keep everything defended there. I'm surprised we didn't see rook b2. I'm wondering what maybe both players saw that we missed.
But also, he goes the other way. But also after queen e1, there were ideas like queen c2, threatening queen g2 and queen h2. There were so many tempting possibilities. And did Hikaru just realize that he could have gone rook b2? Is that what just happened?
Yeah, it would have been a little bit worse. Because of this pawn capture, the bishop is now really locked out of the action. So it's all about this queen and rook here against white's queen and rook. I think Hikaru he needs the pieces now on the board. I'm starting to get potentially concerned about all the endgames. And rook d3, what a defensive move.
Love it. Offense is the best defense. He wants to trade the rooks. You can get that rook from b2 off the board. That's what you want to do. He stops queen h1 check. The bar doesn't like it. Queen g1?
Yeah, I'm starting to wonder about queen g1, but it's a funny position. The king can run up the board. You have to be damn sure that you're giving checkmate, Tanya, because start to get concerned. So h5 to prevent it.
He's put the king in a kill zone. Now queen g1 would be absolutely deadly. You have one move to fight this, Aman. How do you do it?
I was going to say rook to d1 maybe, but queen c2 not liked. Rook b3, allowing the check on b8. And Hikaru says, I got my queen g1 idea. That's all I need. 17 seconds. I've calculated this out.
But can he go rook check and get his knight on f7 and try to get it to g5? Give some kind of perpetual. But I think Hikaru's seen a resource to that. If knight f7, you just simply move the bishop. Knight f7 is the move. The blue arrow appears because you're threatening a perpetual. And this is how the game will end.
Bishop h6,
knight g5, knight f7.
I'm wondering about, is there knight g5 now and some sort of rook f,
it's a blunder.
Rook b7, excuse me?
Aman, it's a blunder. Rook b7 and how are you getting the queen into the attack? But he misses it.
That's all you needed. You just needed to play rook check, pawn takes back, the queen covers all the checks. That would have been it. Instead, he's going for more with f5. Oh my goodness.
And now there's a mate in one being threatened. If Hikaru's king survives the check, this is game over for Liem. There's no way you can fight rook h2 or queen h2. But they're just repeating. And that's it. It ends in a draw.
Goodness.
Could he have run away with the king?
So in that final position,
was king g7 possible?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm wondering there. It's a draw by repetition, and believe me, you see the players on the camera there, they are both looking now at the game review, Tanya, because I would be as curious as they are why that position was not continued by Hikaru. The engine is giving king to g7 and saying, yeah, king g7, continue. We know that the rook check is coming, but the king can just keep going. I think what was concerning was maybe a knight f5 check, but honestly, after knight takes f5, you can just take it back. And Tanya, there's just no way to continue as long as you avoid the rook checks. You've got it. King g6 next.
And that would have been Hikaru's third win in a row. But what a crazy, crazy game that was. And we can see Hikaru on our camera right now. I think he's still analyzing it and he realizes what he just missed in that final position, Aman.